It is my pleasure to introduce Jonathon Lobbins. Jonathon is a founder of Keycard Health, the managing partner at Naventra, and a seasoned C-suite executive with more than 25 years of experience shaping business, strategy, operations, clinical initiatives, technology, and product development. He's held senior leadership roles at globally recognized organizations such as Siemens Healthineers, Edwards Life Sciences, and Medtronic, where he spearheaded innovative healthcare ventures. Before launching Keycard, Jonathon served as CEO and board chair of, I think it's Primasun, you didn't look that up, but a company dedicated to advancing access to sleep care. As its first dedicated employee, he guided the organization from concept all the way through acquisition readiness, developing strategy, building infrastructure, securing IP, and leading a team of 40 across all business areas. He managed multi-million dollar P&Ls, drove investor communications, and provided board governance and leadership to both public and private company board members. So today, Jonathon is going to bring this breadth of experience and his proven track record in building high-performing teams and transformative health technologies to his work at Keycard. And so, Jonathon, I'm going to hand it over to you to start the first keynote.
Great. Thank you, Ingrid. Well, hello to everyone that I haven't met. I'm just excited to be here, excited to be a recent addition, to the D advisory board, and looking forward to just a few minutes. I'll keep it to 12 as close as possible to really walk you through a couple of areas. Number one is just how to navigate, as far as career development, a dynamic career. I'll start out with some insights from my career and then quickly move into just some key nuggets and takeaways that you can think about as you progress through your career. So to start out, a little bit about me, and I'll go through this quickly because I think Ingrid just covered most of it, but many years in health tech, a little odd as I'll go through. I started out actually degree in chemistry, Michigan State, materials engineering, University of Florida, and then ended up going back to business school. So I started out in high tech, many years in MedTech, and then was currently in health tech. And next I'm kind of moving into insurtech. So a very varied background covering both founder partner roles. But mostly for me, it's really about the impact. I love these roles that are improving lives. I remember, I think many years ago at Medtronic, someone said a career in this, healthcare is as much a career as it is a calling. And it's really just an opportunity, to do something that's meaningful kind of long term. So I'll walk through that as well as my non-traditional career journey next. But before that, a little bit about me, my first meeting here. So I love water, pretty much anything. I grew up fishing a bunch in Michigan. So also love boating, anything with the water. You usually find me as much as I've moved around, it's usually near a coast. From the Great Lakes coast to I lived in Massachusetts, I lived in Florida, Ingrid, so I know the hurricane seasons when they're there. Minnesota with their many lakes, all the way Northern California to Southern California where I currently am. So I've covered most water areas, but love water, love creativity. Cooking is my de-stressor. My mom was a caterer, so I was always around her in the kitchen. So I just kind of, cook chopped style just to take things off my mind. And it's kind of how I look at even, businesses is how can I create something from, a bunch of different parts that may not initially look like they go together. I also love health and health tracking. I have the Apple Watch and, all the new, gadgets that come out. I'm always interested in kind of how technology blends. And I love, spending time with family and watching sports. Grew up in Michigan, so have always been a Detroit Lions fan through the ups and the downs and the ups and the little bit of a down recently. But just my passion is really, kind of holistically and making sure, there's some balance. So that's a little bit about me and about my career path. So I talked about kind of the linear career path. One of the things I've done is just embraced the career twists. There's always, kind of twists and turns. There's always moments in time and history that, kind of come and go. And it's for me, it's how did I optimize those as much as I could? Always going back to that purpose, knowing that, career decisions were, after the high tech industry, they were pretty focused on how can I make an impact on lives in a positive way. I was pre-med, as an undergrad. So that always kind of stuck with me as, the healthcare purpose, the healthcare impact that you can have. even with your family. As you continue to grow in healthcare, you'll get more calls from family member about different things. So it's a great place to be. And then gathering valuable takeaways. I'll talk about that in a few different ways. Is one thing I've been pretty focused on is, at each step, not only what am I doing in a specific role, but what am I taking away that can help me in the next set. So really three phases of career for me. One was really the foundations. It was a lot of engineering, technology. Again, I was, in microelectronics. It's interesting now with AI and all the semiconductor companies talking and, how the world kind of converges back. But that's where I was, spending time, patents, publications, many in both. And that was at Lucent Bell Labs. And I went to IBM. And again, sometimes you go with it. I remember going into little story, my manager at Lucent saying I was going to leave and go to IBM. And he's like, wow, that's great because we were just going to tell everybody we're shutting the plant down in 2 days, right? So he's like, can you take me with you to California? So it's just, those things where you try to always, just focus on your guiding North Star because the world sometimes will do what the world does. And that was just an example where, that moved me to IBM, which at the time I was sitting there training models to capture and do what the human eye could do. I had no idea what it was called back then. But, a lot of things just build up. So that was my early career time, phase one. Phase two was really moving into healthcare, and I was pretty, passionate about that as well. I was at IBM, and I think my sponsor at the time said, hey, I've got an opportunity you can do in Japan. It's an expat. And I was like, And he's like, what do you really want to do? So that's when I actually said, I want to go into healthcare. So that's when I made that pivot into healthcare, went to a conference, a lot of great conferences back then. I think it was NSBE, where I had quite a few career opportunities, and just found healthcare. And that really led me into something that I wanted to do is how do I identify new opportunities where there's a growth opportunity within a company? How do I help assess it? How do I help understand, the market, just the opportunity, the product market fit, everything. And that's really something that I had always wanted to do because it took into account my technical background, but also my background early at Medtronic working on, kind of finance type projects. So after Covidien, I actually was at Medtronic, then left to go to Covidien, then Medtronic acquired Covidien. So I continued that work, then went to Siemens Healthineers for their Corindus acquisition to lead that. I was actually responsible at the time. They said, hey, we want to bring in medical devices into Siemens. And I was like, this is great. I always wanted to do BD. I always wanted to, just be in charge of medical device acquisitions. 2 months into that, they said, oh, decision, we're not going to have medical devices into Siemens Healthineers. But you can work on this commercial initiative. And I'm like, sure, I'll try that. And I just was open to it. About a year into that role, I got a ping from Google Health and ResMed saying, oh, we see you've got commercial experience along with your other degree. Why don't you, are you open to leading a joint venture as general manager, which became CEO? And that was Primasun, which is really a digital health company focused on, how do we help more people figure out what's going on in their body and get to sleep apnea care if they need to. So that was, again, a fun role. As Ingrid mentioned, I was dedicated employee number one. We got it to, actually, it was acquired um, in about 3 years, which was a great experience going from employee number one to being acquired. That led me to my next, where I said, okay, how can I help another company get acquired? So that's where I've been focusing on for Naventra, which is an advisory company. And I've been working exclusively with both large companies and a startup that is now in the process of being acquired by a multi-billion-dollar company. So that led me to say, okay, how can I bring some of this together? So right now, as Ingrid mentioned, I do both. I do consulting, with an AI focus, and also starting a company, completely AI founded company, to help with bridging healthcare access, because that was one of the needs that we saw that wasn't solved, is just healthcare access all the way from personalized health to automated healthcare access to ultimately being an employer benefit and trying to tap into that $2 trillion employer benefit market. So some key nuggets when you think about your career, how do you own it? Treat it like a startup. Um, Again, take calculated risks where there's opportunities, identify and solve problems. Even more precedent right now, because you have a unique opportunity with the technologies of AI to solve problems, even if you're not an expert in that. The business I'm starting now, I'm not an expert, but I've got GPT Pro, and it is an amazing, way to just help look at areas that you're not an expert in. And it kicks out 40-page deep research reports that have no hallucinations because it's the deep research level. Um, and again, those are things that, weren't available 4 or 5 years ago. So take advantage. And then treasure hunt at every stop. So that's what I did is I tried to look at it as a treasure hunt. And here's an example I'll go through quickly. As a technical engineer early on in my career, I left with patents publications. I used those then to move into technical program management. And that's was with IBM. And then Medtronic's like, oh, you've got program manager experience. We need that. So then I used that to move into healthcare. And then why I had the program management, I wanted to bridge more into management. So I used that opportunity to go back and get an MBA, which then qualified me more for the business type of roles in strategy, business development to be a business development manager, which moved me into M&A. And after doing that, that gave me the M&A opportunity as far as an executive. And as I mentioned, I had the commercial there, which then, led to my commercial plus M&A because they wanted somebody with the ability to know the company could get acquired from an acquirer's perspective when I joined Primasun. So it all stacks. But again, every time it was, as you see the picture of Monopoly there, it is somewhat of Monopoly in your career. You're moving around, but also, hey, what do I have when I leave, right? What asset have I built? What is my assets under management that I'm, building holistically? So one thing I'll just go through quickly on this slide because I know I'm, moving quickly with time. Embrace brutal optimism. That's one thing. I had a publication 2 years ago on brutal optimism. And in an environment where there's challenges, I always try to think, what's the brutal reality that we're in? And, just being transparent about that. But then what can we do about it? What do we have? What unique tools and unique things that we have right now that we can use, again, like AI and other things that can help take it to the next level? If there's not a career opportunity and I've applied for 500 roles and, then what can I create? How can I solve a problem
Mhm.
using the tools that are out there? Because ultimately you're paid to solve problems. And again, think like a founder, embrace risk, and don't forget to give back. This is key. Block out distractions. There's a lot, but solving meaningful problems is something that will always be helpful to you, especially when you embrace AI to be able to do that. So in closing, really, think about how to, plan like an asset manager in investment, meaning plan your career in phases if you're not, if unless you're already on that track. And don't forget to build out your own career assets under management. Sometimes it's easy to get into the vortex of what everyone wants of you, but it's also good to think about what you're taking with you. Second, prioritize like a founder. How do you prioritize the problems you're solving and embrace being an entrepreneur in your role? And then the last is really delegate like a CEO. It is easier to delegate even if you don't have staff now because you have a great tool called artificial intelligence that, now sends me unprompted every morning. Hey, Jonathan, there was a new report out last night. This will impact your business model like this. We recommend you change your milestones. I mean, this is all unprompted, right? And I was one of the early folks jumping on, agents, but just the ability to do things you've never done before kind of drowns out the challenges you may have in the current environment. So with that, I will end and pass it back to Ingrid, unless there's any
Thank
questions.
you. That was great, Jonathan. I really appreciate it. I wish we had more time because you had some really key nuggets there. But I definitely heard flexibility in terms of what you were willing to do as you went through your career. So a lot to learn, a lot of hand claps.